Welcome, homeschool history scholars, to the Progressive Era, a fascinating, sprawling, and very relevant period in American history, though it happened 100 years ago. Fascinating because it was the first time that Americans had to fundamentally rethink how the assumptions upon which their country was based, free market capitalism and political democracy, had to be reorganized to create fairness in the new and emerging industrial age. Sprawling because this challenge touched every economic and social activity on every level, and relevant because we are facing the same kinds of challenges today. In fact, the more you learn about the Progressive Era, the more contemporary the problems of their age seem. In this unit you will learn what they were and what they are, and how the progressives proposed to solve them. First, you will learn that the reform impulse which drove the Progressive Era has always been alive and well in American history. One of the strongest threads in our history has been the urge to perfect and improve the stability of the community without sacrificing the freedom of the individual, which would presumably leave him free for that pursuit of happiness so often cited in the Declaration of Independence. The Progressive Era is not the most recent chapter in that story, but it is the largest and the most comprehensive. So the strategies and tactics, goals and ambitions, successes and failures of the progressives are worth learning about. In this unit you will learn why, starting about 1890, the progressive impulse became so urgent in America, and you will learn who was driving it. You will learn a lot about the charismatic individuals who fueled the movement's growth and charted its course, including two of America's most historic presidents. You will learn about the progressive strategies for challenging and changing the status quo, why some of their ideas worked while others didn't, and what cultural and institutional challenges they faced in their often quixotic quest for the more perfect union, which they were fond of citing in the Constitution. The Progressive Era was about much more than changing the laws, however. It was also about changing American cultural expectations and social practices. You will learn how the progressive point of view was represented in established religion, in the esoteric world of philosophy, in the raucous circus of expose journalism, in the hallowed halls of academia, and in the scholarly journals of social criticism. Even the Supreme Court got the progressive bug and began handing down opinions which contradicted sacrosanct precedent that had been established for 100 years. You will learn how and why some of the fights the progressives took on are still unresolved. A winner has not been declared. You will learn how and in what specific ways history itself sometimes became the progressives' strongest ally, as events sometimes pointed out the obvious need for reform at least as convincingly as they could. Sometimes the progressives simply rode that wave of public commendation and approval, temporarily relieved of their duty to create it. You will learn about the limitations of the progressives, too, how their vision was sometimes unclear to large groups in the American mainstream, and why their goals often seemed arrogant, myopic, or presumptuous to large sections of public opinion. Undeterred, and always obedient to their higher law of purpose and morality, they stayed in the fight anyway. You will learn what the consequences were to the country when they did, and how effective their evangelism was in the end. You will also learn how the progressives differed among themselves, for they were in no wise a monolithic force, and unity among them was as rare as conflict was common. They shared an idealistic creed and a strong sense of social responsibility, but the means to their goals, and even the goals, were seldom determined by consensus. They assembled, broke up, and reassembled in varieties of coalitions as the need required. You will learn the strengths and weaknesses for them of this tendency. It is a problem common to all social movements who have a change-based agenda. You will learn what effect the progressives had on the gritty world of organized labor, itself a new movement which was reorganizing to become more effective in the new industrial economy of mass production and consumerism. Does a visionary progressive have anything of interest to say to a gritty, cigar-chomping steelworker? How to energize the working masses with a new vision has been a central challenge of every change-based social movement. Related to that, you will also learn how much of what the progressives wanted was actually doable, and how much was just dreaming. Were they ahead of their time? Or was much of their vision just unrealistic, both in their time and in ours? You will learn enough about them to decide this question. You will learn where the progressives stood on the grand, overarching question of race in America. Racial discrimination was a huge issue at the time, probably the most divisive issue, and it was so for sound historic reasons. The progressives were all about making a new story for tomorrow's history books, but they were also children of their time. You will learn who represented the progressive impulse on the race question and why. You will learn about the two schools of thought on how to take down the racial divide, and how, and to what extent, each was successful. When progressive ideas got the attention of national politicians, senators, and presidents, progressives attained the most influential stage from which to broadcast their agenda, and acquired the most powerful and persuasive friends to help them do so. Many of today's social safety nets and government regulations in the public interest, as well as modern political institutions to enhance the democratic process, were put into place at this time. Our world is a progressive world, and you will learn about the charismatic public figures who carried this effort forward. Every movement has its apotheosis, and these colossi of the national consciousness defined progressivism's deepest and most fundamental assumptions and initiatives. Every movement passes into history also, usually because matters of more urgency capture the public's attention. You will learn how the progressives' raucous march towards enlightened capitalism and participatory democracy was gradually drowned out by the war drums of World War I, when President Wilson, ironically, decided to expand the progressive ideal to a suffering and divided Europe and make the world safe for democracy, as he liked to say. The irony was that marshaling the country's military and industrial might for this effort tended to make a mockery of democracy, civil rights, and free enterprise capitalism at home. You will learn how this happened, and you will decide if the end justified the means. Finally, you will learn in what ways the progressive era lives with us today, its historic precedents offering a kind of litmus test for the fitness of the laws to serve the public interest and the ability of the capitalist system to produce prosperity for the maximum number of people. The progressives discovered that the Constitution could be interpreted, and the laws written, and the free enterprise system of capitalism regulated to enhance the greatest political and economic good for the greatest number of citizens. Every generation must develop a plan to embrace that challenge, and in this unit you will discover the progressives' blueprint for that accomplishment.